In this video, I'm going to show you how we select and train our human transcriptionists to be the best in the industry. By the end of the video, you're going to see how it's easier to get into Harvard and Y Combinator by numbers than it is to become a transcriptionist at Inflection Transcribe. For those of you who don't know me, I'm James Gwynn. I'm the CEO and founder of Inflection Transcribe. We've been in the financial transcription industry since 2019, specializing specifically in AI transcription workflows as well as humans in the loop. And so our clients include some of the biggest expert networks in the world, as well as billion-dollar financial organizations and financial data providers. So the first thing is, why are human transcriptionists still so important in the transcription workflow, especially when there are a lot of competitors and it looks like from the outside, a lot of industries are moving towards AI transcription or completely automated systems. Is AI transcription getting more accurate? Absolutely. Does that mean there are more use cases that can rely just on AI transcription and therefore are supplanting the need for human transcription? Absolutely. But here's the caveat. There are a few use cases where the cost of making a mistake in transcription is so high that paying a small premium relative to the overall potential cost of that mistake makes complete sense. And one of those use cases is in the finance industry. So if you think about why transcription is generally being used right now in finance, there's a couple of reasons. It's keeping a record for compliance, right? If you get the record wrong, suddenly there's a big mistake, and that mistake costs a lot of money. The other use case is informing investment decisions. It could be from an earnings call, taking key insights, key numbers out of that earnings call and then putting it into an investment model, or it might be reading through the earnings call and making qualitative judgments or assessments based on what a company is doing, whether it's a good or bad investment. If you think about the magnitude of money that is actually going into making these decisions, we're talking about millions of dollars here. One mistake, if something was transcribed as 18, but it actually was 80, suddenly that is a huge discrepancy. That could skew an entire investment model. It could put an analyst off on the wrong trail if they are looking for subsidiary research or adjacent assertions based on that company's profile. If they're looking at it based on 18% versus 80%, that's very different. Let's say AI transcription, one of the things it's not perfect at is understanding contextually what the currency of a figure is. So let's say we talk about $18 billion. Let's say AI transcription transcribed it as $18 billion. What happens if that was actually 18 billion peso? Completely different currency, different context. And suddenly the magnitude of that investment decision is very different. And so when you think about the mistakes and the cost of those potential mistakes, it makes sense in these use cases, adding a premium for one human, multiple humans to be in the loop, to cross-check, to validate, to verify the accuracy of the actual transcription becomes so incredibly important. And so it's in these use cases, as long as there are industries that exist where a mistake is very costly, there exists still a demand and a market for the human verified versions of those transcripts. So now let's take a more extreme example. On the other side, let's take meeting recordings often, right? But if we're using meeting recordings as an actual record on which we are training AI models being implemented internally, the accuracy of the transcript in a meeting could really mean something. And so you can see there is different use cases, there are different nuances across the board, but as long as there are industries, as long as there are use cases where accuracy matters, costs a lot of money, there is a need for human transcription, right? And that is true for the finance space, that's true for the legal space, that's true for the medical space. Generally, those are very highly compliant and the cost of a material mistake is quite considerable. That's where you're going to see a real persistence for demand for human transcription. Now, how is that going to evolve? There's a number of things that could evolve in the market. It could be the productivity of human transcriptionists, what human transcriptionists actually need to do. What human transcriptionists needed to do was create audio fidelity perfect transcripts, match every single word that is spoken in the audio to match it with every single word that is written down in the transcript. Now, as technology has evolved, a lot of that audio fidelity is taken care of from AI. But now, instead of having to write out that first draft of a transcript, a human's actually now used to go in and review the first draft that's already been created by the AI, making sure the AI doesn't make any mistakes. So it goes from a transcriptionist more to a reviewer or an editing role. And we're seeing another evolution from that again. One of the key aspects and the key tasks for a human transcriptionist in the finance industry is verifying proper nouns. So that could be company names, that could be executive names, that could be product names, that could be anything else that is mentioned that requires some level of research. Previous to AI transcription, that is absolutely one of the components and responsibilities of a transcriptionist. but they also had to type out every single word. Now, when there is a first draft from AI, more of the work becomes around verification and research. So the skill sets that a transcriptionist needs potentially becomes less about typing speed. Maybe it's about proficiency with being able to verify and research proper nouns, or phonetically being able to hear different accents and understand, I may not be the fastest typer, but I'm able to hear and make educated guesses and then research and validate what I believe are the proper nouns or key terminology in a transcript. These things become really important, and these are the skill sets. These are the things that we're seeing evolve as AI transcription comes in more. There still is a need for humans as long as there exists a material cost for a mistake by AI. We've absolutely seen an evolution of the industry. There are different needs and different use cases for human transcription, but generally speaking, as the arrow of progress starts to move more towards AI transcription becoming more accurate, you start to see a higher premium placed upon the edge cases where AI is not able to solve that. The speaker diarization or identification, understanding the differences between those, that's something now a human is able to do a lot more accurately with a high level of confidence than AI, right? And so it's these sorts of use cases that we're seeing humans become really critical for in the finance industry and adjacent industries that are highly compliant as well. So in Inflection Transcribe, how do we go about solving that? We have a very high volume. We have over 10,000 transcriptionist applications every single month, and we accept under 1% of that. And so that actually makes our acceptance rate more difficult to get into than Y Combinator and Harvard. And so we are unapologetic about being as meticulous and selective as possible because we need to vet very specific skills. As AI becomes more advanced, both in terms of what's happening at a macro, but also in a local situation or a micro level, we're investing very heavily to improve our AI. And so there's a number of different things we evaluate for. We've moved away from just typing speed in isolation. We're starting to see more emphasis on the ability to research, the ability to contextually understand something, the ability to understand different accents, crosstalk, the ability to be very persistent and very resilient. Because when you're listening to very difficult audio over a long period of time, you're going to need a level of resilience and discipline to be able to go back and listen again and again before you're able to get it. Attention to detail becomes very important. We're moving more towards an emphasis on research, on understanding financial acumen, having a deeper acuity with different company terminology, with different industries. We're also understanding a baseline understanding of general finance terms. Even though our AI is getting better at identifying acronyms, identifying tickers, being able to understand the context of what is ROI, understanding different financial terminology or numeric terminology. So understanding different currencies, understanding how to read the context for a conversation to identify and ascertain what that currency may mean. When somebody doesn't necessarily give a unit of measurement, how can we understand what that unit is going to be? So understanding all those different things, they're the really key things that we assess for in our application pool. And then we have so many qualification steps. We have to assess, obviously, their basic English and grammatical and punctuation understanding. So that's going to filter out a number of people. But then we start to go through very practical tests. It goes from applying, passing multiple stages of skills tests, to even getting to our assessment pool. And once we get into the assessment pool, that's when we start to really personalize the training for our proprietary technology. To revise, imagine creating a Ferrari engine, which is the AI transcription engine. A Ferrari engine needs to be put in a Ferrari chassis. If you put a Ferrari engine in a Toyota car, it won't be able to go as fast. But if you have a Ferrari engine in a Ferrari chassis, then you're going to have drivers that have been trained, that are qualified to drive a Ferrari. I guarantee you, if I am driving a Ferrari versus an F1 driver who has been trained to drive a Ferrari, they will smoke me. They will drive so much faster than I am able to. I've not built up the muscle memory. I've not built up the understanding of all the different tools, all the shortcuts, the augmentations that platform can do for my editing workflow. And so that is so critical that we are evaluating our entire application pool for what are the skill sets, what are the characteristics, what are the types of editors, what are the types of human skill sets that are most aligned, that are most conducive to what we require in our editor, okay? Because somebody who used to use a foot pedal 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you're not familiar with what a foot pedal is, you would literally have a pedal on the ground that would start and stop the audio. Somebody who is very familiar with that, who may have transcribed for over 10 years, may not necessarily be as adaptable to the new workflow we have created with our editing platform. And so understanding those nuances, evaluating early for how adaptable How tech forward are these editors is incredibly important to us. Being able to be agile, being able to use the tools at their disposal, being able to work in a team because multiple editors are working on a file, to be able to review that, be able to understand what is the most expedited way that we can use technology to enhance the actual transcription process becomes so important. And so that is a really key thing. We're assessing hearing skill sets, the ability to understand business terminology, the ability to research under time constraints as well, because somebody who researches something in 10 hours versus 10 minutes, that's going to be a magnitude shift. So somebody who takes 10 hours may not be a good fit for what we're building in terms of a workflow. We have to build out very specialized training for each module, each feature, each functionality of our platform. We have personalized training courses internally based on different modules, based on different skill sets required for transcription, whether it's hearing, whether it's grammar, whether it's research, whether it's style-guide adherence, whether it is understanding how to format financial terms, understanding the different components of different style guides and understanding how to check that. All of those are baked into the different modules that we set up to train our team. Tight feedback loop. We understand that the tighter the feedback loop is, the better the actual product and the better the features are, right? Then how do we tighten the feedback loop for us to give feedback about whether an editor is performing well or not well and actually help them improve those skill sets? Because over time, what does that do? It creates a standardization, a consistency in terms of performance in a very objective way. It encourages a certain consistency of output and the quality of a product, right? So we don't only want to be the most accurate transcription provider in the industry, we also want to be the fastest, right? The fastest perfect transcription in the world. That's our guarantee. And so how are we able to do that? We're able to teach our human editors the different skills. And if maybe they don't have all those skills, then we put them in a different stream within our organization where they are actively being invested in by our in-house training team and development team, as well as the different tools we have internally to help them develop those skill sets. So it's a very extensive process. And that's why it's hard for people to replicate exactly what we do. Cutting edge proprietary technology workflows that we have built over the last 6 years. It's also proprietary workflows that we've built in terms of optimizing, training, investing in the human element. So when you put those two things together, not only do we have the leading AI workflows for financial transcription, but we also have the leading workflows for the training and development of the quote unquote F1 drivers in our Ferrari cars that we've built from the ground up. How are we able to really address consistency of quality across what is, by definition, a fairly seasonal industry? The main thing there is a standardization of our training. We're training them how to transcribe using the tools that we are able to give them. Given our technology, given the workflow that we've created, the starting point for all of our transcriptionists look fairly similar. We do our best before it gets to a transcriptionist to standardize their experience. The more we can templatize what our transcriptionists actually do, it enables them to focus on the areas that we've invested the most in for them, right? Meaning it allows them to focus on research, on verification of company names, on verification on numeric formatting. It allows them to focus on speaker identification. If we're able to do a lot of the other heavy lifting, we're able to templatize the actual process and workflow for human editors to go ahead and create a consistent experience for the editors. A consistent experience for the editors increases the probability for consistent input from the editors. Consistent input from the editors will therefore lead to consistent output for our clients. Here is what you do every time you get a file. Even though you have invested very heavily in understanding how to research, you understand industry-specific or vertical-specific terminology, you have a deeper acuity to understand accents or understand certain names or product names that have been mentioned before, and you've been already trained and prepared on these sorts of data sets, dictionaries, glossaries, and lexicon. Every single time you look at a transcript, you should be going through steps A through Z to ensure the highest accuracy and perfect transcription possible. It allows us to approach seasonality with a level of consistency and conviction in the quality of output that we actually create. Because if all files, even though they're different topics, even though they're different industries, they're different variables within the actual file, if the experience of editing is as constant as possible, this allows us to scale quality, right? One of the major differences for us as a transcription provider is we've standardized quality because our technology is able to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and the training we've invested in to curate and build the absolute best talent of transcriptionists enables us to scale that quality. One of the last questions here is, we're seeing an increased commoditization of transcription through AI. How does our investment in human expertise protect against that? When a lot more people are starting to say, okay, you know what? I'm not willing to pay for a premium because AI transcription is getting good enough. What I would say to that is that makes complete sense. And I agree with you. In the use cases, for the people who are willing to forego accuracy for either cost or speed, if we look at the Trinity, we have speed, we have cost, and we have accuracy. So the people who are willing to trade off accuracy for a little bit faster speed or a little bit cheaper cost, I would say they're making the right call, right? Because they're not generally the clientele that we serve. The clientele that we serve are the people that aren't willing to trade off accuracy. But the sort of clientele that we serve, and we see that it's going to be a persisting vertical within the area of transcription, is the highly compliant, the high risk use cases where making a mistake in transcription costs a lot of money. Are they willing to forego speed? Sometimes. Are they willing to forego cost? Sometimes. But they're not willing to forego accuracy. Now, the people who are starting to trend towards, okay, we can get good enough transcripts. It could be from a media perspective. It could be from a podcasting perspective. It could be from a meeting notes perspective. I would say absolutely you are doing the right thing, because that trinity exists. If accuracy isn't one of the main things that you really care about, then you should be trying to optimize for cost, or you should be trying to optimize for speed. We're trying to deliver something in the market that hasn't yet existed, where we're trying to solve all three of those. That trinity has not been solved yet at the accuracy and at the standard that our clients, or the highly compliant use cases, the high risk use cases for transcription require. And so, as I said before, as long as there is a demand for highly accurate transcription, as long as there is a cost for inaccurate transcription, right? As long as there is a cost ascribed to a mistake or an error in transcription, there is going to be a premium, there is going to be a market for people willing to pay for that accuracy. The accuracy, there is a trade-off, either at cost or at speed. If people are willing to forego those things, they're able to get the accuracy they demand. Is there a commoditization across industries? Absolutely. Does that change a need for highly accurate, highly compliant, human perfect transcription? They're not mutually exclusive. The last thing is, how are we seeing the evolution of AI transcription and the augmentation with humans? Humans will exist as long as there is a need for highly accurate transcription. And it's as simple as that. What the humans do will change. As I've said before, we've seen an evolution from going from a foot pedal to actually just reviewing AI edited transcription. We're going to see another evolution, perhaps, where we're going to see even a stronger emphasis on verification, fact checking, and less on audio fidelity, because that might be a variable, right? There's going to be potentially triaging of specific low probability or low confidence scores in transcription, where humans can then work exclusively. And there's going to be a high enough confidence in other areas of a transcription that a lot of clients are going to be willing to trust AI. The actual task, the actual responsibilities, the actual workflows of human transcription is going to evolve, right? What we're really betting on is providing the tools to make our humans as productive as possible. So when that evolution does occur, we're in the front seat. So as there is a stronger demand for premium human transcription, but there's higher expectations about being able to do that potentially at a lower cost or at a faster speed, we want to be at the forefront of that. We want to deliver the fastest, perfect transcription in the world, and we want to be the leaders across those three variables, but understanding that the vector we care about most is accuracy. So that's what we're going to continue to innovate for. If you take the analogy of an F1 car, are we potentially going to see in the future the idea of a co-pilot or a semi-autonomous F1 car and autonomous vehicles racing each other? That seems plausible, right? Is there potentially still going to be a need for humans to be in it? That also seems plausible. You can see these realities playing out. These cars are going to get smarter and smarter, meaning they're going to get faster and faster. But why would we still have a human in the driver's seat? Because what we are betting on is that final calibration point, that final who is driving the car, who's driving the machinery, will be humans. And will there be a stage in the future where maybe we're just seeing autonomous cars race each other? Potentially. And we may see a future where clients and customers in the market are willing to trust just AI. And that may come, right? That the arrow of progress is pointing towards there's unknown unknowns between where we are today with human augmented transcription and where the future lies with fully autonomous transcription. I believe it will happen. So what we're really solving for here is building the best tools that our humans can use, and then also investing as much as we can to find the best humans, train the best humans, and invest in the human augmented transcription workflow that creates the fastest perfect transcription in the world. If you're interested in what we do, or you want to understand more about the mechanics of the transcription workflow, or how transcription becomes a prerequisite for any company looking to invest in generative AI, because transcription is the data set for audio data, head to inflectiontranscribe.com. That's inflectiontranscribe.com, and I'll see you there.